Hello and welcome to the 66th episode of the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Mark Lee of Bookmark Lee. I'm a mentor, speaker and debunker.
And I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101. Can't talk. Supporting you to stand out. Each week on the podcast, we showcase another experienced accountant or bookkeeper who we think can inspire and encourage other accountants and bookkeepers in practice around the UK.
We both recognise that every accountant and bookkeeper is unique and distinct. They have different backgrounds, experiences and reasons for starting and building their practices.
Yeah, so we asked them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. We look to explore what makes them different in terms of their background, their successes, their failures, and their focus.
Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for others like you, our loyal listener. And if you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Philippa or me. We're now looking for guests for the end of August and into September and October.
Indeed we are. So today in our 54th interview, we are delighted to introduce Kath Docherty. Kath launched her practice, Hydref Accounting, in Cirencester back in November 2019. She'd previously run another accounting practice for 17 years, having originally qualified as a chartered accountant. Her career also spans extensive periods spent in industry. At Hydref, she is her client's sole point of contact, preferring to work with a select client base, understanding their businesses and establishing long-term relationships.
Welcome to the podcast, Kath. What would you like to add before we get into the interview?
No, I think that's a lovely introduction by Philippa. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
more to come.
To be fair, I did write it for her, but...
Okay.
I know, I only had to read it. Okay, so anyway, before we start, we must thank the sponsor of the podcast, Pinnacle Global Group, the trusted offshoring partner to over 150 accounting and bookkeeping firms across the UK and Ireland, led by London-based chartered accountant Mayank Pandya. With offices in London and Mumbai and a team of over 300 professionals, Pinnacle provides both compliance resourcing from accountants, bookkeepers and payroll admins to tax and audit associates, and value-added support, including management accounts, virtual finance controllers, financial analysts, and more. They're GDPR compliant, ISO certified, covered by professional indemnity insurance, and offer flexible models, full-time, part-time, or pay as you go. You can even start with a trial period to join their sponsored trip to Mumbai to meet the team in person. Find out more at www.pinnacleoss.co.uk or click the link wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Also supporting the podcast is the Tax Advice Network. Their website enables accountants to choose specific specialist tax advisors for general tax support or for help across any of over 100 areas of tax. It's free to use. You just pay the tax advisor that you choose after agreeing terms with them. Go and take a look at their website, findataxadvisor.online, where you can also register to get their weekly tax tips, which are written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Good stuff. Right, back to our guest, Kath. As you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing on a few key questions. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, so let's go back to the start, Kath. How and why did you set up Hydref Accounting? And how did you get your first clients?
Well, I set up Hydref Accounting because I had sold my previous firm, C&M Accountants, and I sold that firm because actually it was completely compliance based. And to be honest with you, it was like herding cats. It wasn't really sort of satisfying from a personal perspective. You were always chasing deadlines and always listening to people's woes of why they couldn't get information together. So I sold C&M and set up Hydref. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was going to offer, apart from the fact that I knew that that's all I'd ever done since I left university was be an accountant. So that was my sort of like speciality. And I guess in the beginning, and this was by August 21, I started really working in Hydref. In the beginning, people came to me through networking in Bristol, because I've done a lot of networking, because they knew I was an accountant. So they came to me to do their accounts and tax. So that is still what I call the bread and butter of the business. But actually, what I discovered actually through doing some work on my motivation is that what I really like is helping people. So it's not actually the bottom line motivator, which is a bit strange. It's actually helping people. And a lot of business owners start in business because they're really passionate about, what they do, and they're fantastic. But maths, finances might not be their skill set. They've appointed an external accountant to do their accounts because they have to be compliant. And maybe that accountant has said, you need to go on QuickBooks or Xero. And they're given a very small, short, little training session. Now, I trained with Grant Thornton, where basically I had an adding machine, an extended trial balance paper, and a pencil, guys, not even a pen, a pencil. And so when software, accounting online software came along, like Xero, Free Agent, QuickBooks, I get really excited about that, because it completely changed the whole landscape of actually keeping on top of your finances. And so now, what Hydref offers is three streams, I guess. One is kind of like helping people to get set up or caught up on software. Obviously, we've got Making Tax Digital coming. There's like an audit, review and recommend, because a lot of business owners, they don't know what they don't know. So they might be using the very top bit of or the top slice of sort of like, what they've been told Xero can do, but they still might be doing a lot of things outside of Xero. They don't know that there's a dashboard there. They don't know that there's a cash flow forecast there, that there's business insights, there's analytics, there's management reports that could be there every single month. And then there's the fractional FD services, which is basically working alongside clients on a regular basis. Again, maybe because they're growing, they've got a bookkeeper in place, they've got an external accountant, but they need somebody in the business. And really, it's about developing those relationships. I think as well, I'll call it curious, but really it's being nosy about the client's business and working with them on a regular basis, rather than being the compliance accountant at the end, where you can actually really add, yes, you're keeping them out of jail and you're keeping them compliant, but you're not able to add as much value because things have already happened. They've already done things. Opportunities have already been lost. So that's why Hydref, although, I am a chartered accountant and I still do a lot of compliance work, really where my passion is enabling business owners to understand and fully utilize platforms like Xero, or help businesses that are in a stage of growth, but they're not yet ready to take on a full-time, qualified, expensive finance manager.
So does that sounds fascinating and admirable as well. Does that mean that you're sometimes brought in where they've potentially got a bookkeeper and year-end accountants who, in theory, some of them could do what you do, but the client has seen or been introduced to you and wants to work with you? Is there any friction with the sort of year-end accountants going, hey, hang on, what have you got this extra person in there for? We could be doing that. I'm not suggesting that they all could, or that there's a direct switch available, but that must come up surely.
Do you know, it actually hasn't.
Wow.
It's logical that there might sort of like, there's a bit of competition here, but actually what I've actually discovered is that accountants are absolutely great referral partners for me as well, because having been in that in that place, what you love is a client that is under control, everything's done correctly, everything's done consistently, and actually that client is ready for the end of year compliance stuff. And I think if they know that there is somebody like me who has an appreciation of the compliance side, but also has been supporting the client throughout the year, it gives them a great degree of comfort. And as I was explaining to a client recently, accountants are actually human. And so if you have a set of books and that a client is all over the place, it's going to be, they may be doing the bookkeeping themselves, it's messy, it's going to be time consuming, it's going to be inefficient. you are not really going to be wanting to do that first. You're going to be working on the clients that you know it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be easy. And I think if you've got somebody like me working alongside the client, you've also got that person to reach out to with initial set of questions and queries. So we've just finished a set of accounts for a client of mine in Cirencester, and I work alongside the compliance, the external accountant, to basically prime them before they start to go, look, here are some issues. Here are the things that I think need to be brought to your attention in terms of sort of like, you know, what you want to do with them. And then afterwards, right, what adjustments have you done? Let's just check that we're all happy with that. And we basically co-present together the end of year accounts to the client. So
Wow.
it actually streamlines the end of year process. And of course, it does take a layer of distraction, shall I say, away from the business owners, because I can talk directly to the external accountant and answer some of those questions to try and make that whole year-end process go as smoothly as possible. And actually, some of my clients have actually had reductions in their end-of-year accounts charges because it's perfect. Why wouldn't it be perfect? Because I'm looking after it.
Yeah. And are we talking here, what sort of size clients are we talking about here? Are these audit clients or
they're not
small?
they're not audit clients. I'm looking at working with an audit client at the moment to basically provide fractional FD services, but they're typically anything from sort of like 500,000 up to 5 million.
Gotcha.
Typically 3 million.
Yeah. So I mean, I obviously know, I remember, you know, when you sort of moved on and you weren't sure what you were going to do next, and you'd thought about bookkeeping, you thought about moving house, and, you know, there were lots of, you've done that, but there were lots of kind of ideas, but also not sure. And obviously you did sort of pin it down, and you've kind of, a few years on, you sort of, you're here talking to us. What's the vision? What you expected it to be, where you are now? It was a bit sort of.
I think the thing with bookkeeping that I get really excited about, and that's why originally I was thinking about bookkeeping, although, you know, I am a qualified chartered accountant, but the bottom line is, if the bookkeeping isn't absolutely sound and robust, it's like a house of cards. The whole thing is going to come falling down. So you can't really go, I'm going to provide fractional FD services and help, you know, with cash flow forecasting and everything like that, if the bookkeeping underneath is poor. And of course, the thing is, so many people in business are bookkeepers, but they are unsuspecting, what I always call unsuspecting bookkeepers. They are the last person in the office, the admin person, the spouse, the partner, that kind of, oh, you can do that. You know, you're giving the keys to the sweetie shop to the person that probably doesn't know exactly what they're doing and the implications. So that's why I do get really excited about bookkeeping. It's just like doing jigsaws, and I love doing jigsaws and sort of like pulling everything together. But I think, and I still do actually a lot of bookkeeping for my clients, because do you know what? If you do the bookkeeping, you do understand everything about that business, because you know it from the bottom up. There is, you know, there's no shame in going, I do the bookkeeping, because do you know what? I love that. Absolutely love that. And if you're doing the bookkeeping, then you are the best person to be providing information on management accounts, because you do know it all. You're not relying on top level reports or asking somebody else. But I think in the, you know, in the 5 years that I've sort of like started Hydref and started growing it, it's been really about realizing the transformation and the value that I can add to clients by, yes, understanding their business, by doing the bookkeeping, but also the great gift of being an accountant all your working life is actually you have an incredible toolbox of ideas, of insights, of tools that actually you don't even sort of like really appreciate until you are in front of a client and they're asking your opinion on something, and you go, actually, I know about this, because, you know, I've worked in big corporate organizations. I've worked in practices at the start when I trained with Grant Thornton. And this is the great thing about, we were talking earlier about sort of like age and getting old. Getting old is fantastic because you add to your experience.
Absolutely.
And of course, the clients benefit from that. And quite often the conversations I'm having isn't just about something technical to do with sort of like bookkeeping or tax. It's about, how do you run a business you know, as a whole, down to like, have you got T's and C's? Have you done sort of like credit checks? You know, what are you using to sort of like collect cash? Yes, they're finance related, but they're not necessarily technical accounting questions, if you like. But you can bring all of that, you know, to your service.
I think that's wonderful. And as the most seasoned of the three of us, I was only saying to somebody the other day that we're all growing older one day at a time, and it's a darn sight better than the alternative. And reflecting on the accumulated wisdom and experience that we have is really worthwhile, and it really comes to the fore with what you're doing there. And I suspect it's also true to say that your passion for bookkeeping in the cloud means that the bookkeeping that you're doing is very different to what it would have been like when we trained 30, 40 years ago with pencils and trial balances and extended trial and all that sort of
plastic bags emptied on the desk and all these little receipts fluffed out, and you just thought, oh my God, you know, I'm going to have to sort these out and write them down into little columns.
I don't imagine you do much of that.
I don't have any clients that aren't on a cloud-based platform. So this, you know, this whole sort of like, I'll just call it rumor mill about, oh, making tax digital is going to be so complicated. And so, no, because a lot of people are there already, because Xero and QuickBooks have done so much sort of like advertising. And of course, these platforms learn as they go along. So the other thing about the bookkeeping activity is, you know, if you know what you're doing as well, it can be a very efficient process. And so sometimes that's why I say to my clients as well, it's quicker to let me do it, because actually it will be done consistently and accurately every single time. And, you know, that's great, because you know, nobody, including me, actually, we've never set up in business to spend all of our time on the bookkeeping. You know, we want to do what we really enjoy doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've had some twists and turns along the way, like we all have. But what have you learned? What are some of the kind of big blockbuster kind of messages or kind of learnings that you've taken from the last few years?
I think the key one is really about pricing. And I think when you start up in business, and I certainly did this with C&M, quite frankly, you have no idea what to price. And if you've been in a corporate organization and then you start up as a sole practitioner, it's all brand new, actually, you know, sort of like fixing prices and making sure you're earning a living. And of course, the danger is that you think, oh, to get business, I need to be the cheapest. And, you know, if you work with a business coach, they'll call that like the killing field. And, you know, the only way is down to the bottom, and you become a busy fool. And, you know, there's a little joke about, you know, if you're speaking to a client and they want to change accountants, you always ask for the full set of accounts, and every accountant goes to the back page. They see what the previous accountants charged, and then they charge that or less. I mean, that's just complete nonsense, because that's assuming that the previous accountant had the pricing right. And really, it's about turning that on its head, which is not about sort of like the cost so much. It's about how can you support the client? How can you deliver value? What is it that they are looking to achieve? And that's why we're saying it's about becoming curious, nosy, and asking a lot of questions, because actually, you know, maybe the client will have a budget in mind, but actually, if, you know, particularly if you're working with them on a management account basis or a fractional FD basis, it's about understanding where they want to take the business and how you can help them on the journey. And then the price sort of like comes off the back of that, in terms of what value can you deliver? What results can you actually sort of like say that you are going to achieve? It takes a bit of confidence. And this is where I think sort of like when you've been in business a while, you work this out, because when you start off as a sole practitioner, sometimes you can just end up being really, really busy. Then you take on more staff, your profit goes down, then you need to have more clients and you go round and round and round and round and round, and it becomes a very sort of like unsatisfying experience. But if you're doing it with the focus on value and the transformation that you're going to give to your clients, that's a completely different headspace, and that's where it becomes really exciting and completely joyful. So it's never about the price.
It's interesting though, because I mean, you're very confident, and I've known you for a long time, and you have opinions. You are, you can articulate those, and so a conversation around pricing. It doesn't surprise me that actually that can be joyful for you, because you've got over that kind of anxiety now, and actually you can take it on with relish, can't you, if you feel confident about it?
Yeah, and I think if you've spent the time with the client to understand exactly what they need and what they are looking for, then actually by the time, and it's about asking sort of like, permission-based questions, and sort of when you come to the end where you're making an offer, and it is about an offer rather than selling to them.
Yeah.
You're in a place of comfort and understanding that actually you can help the client, and they understand that you can help them as well. And then to make them an offer and go, and this is what it looks like, this is how we can work together, and this is how I can help you achieve your goals, actually becomes quite an easy process, and actually if you've brought the client along with you in terms of those questions, then actually that you've got a high chance of success there. And I think if you are literally just, oh, I need a set of accounts, it's compliance based, they don't associate value with it. I mean, I had an inquiry before Christmas, we want a set of accounts, and I just said, don't do that. No, I'm not quoting on just a set of accounts. I'm more than that. And I did have a look at what they were paying, and I said, you know what, I think you're paying a fair price. So I thought, I'll give you something. I think you're paying a fair. They would not let me go. So in the end, I had a coffee with them, asked all the questions, and their accountants were going through sort of like a restructure. They'd lost connectivity and communication. And they said, well, we're going to have a price increase. We want to pay less. And I said, look, this is how I work. And I quoted more, and I got them, because actually they'd spent the time with me to understand that I'm not going to be the same. I'm not going to be delivering the same service as their old accountant. And, now we're 6 months down the line, and they said, my God, you are just exactly what we needed, because we thought we understood Xero. She said, you are absolutely fastidious. I thought she said tedious the first time. She said, you're fastidious and making sure that everything's right. She said, but now, I know that you are completely different, and that's why you are more expensive.
And they're getting more value than they were getting
exactly.
Before.
Yeah,
and they didn't know it was possible.
Exactly. And until you have that conversation, and until they start working with you, and then they go, oh, nobody's asked us this before, nobody's checked this before, oh, we didn't realize that was an issue. And all of a sudden they can see the difference. I mean, to a certain extent, it is true that you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing is, with clients that I'm now working with that have gone to a bigger firm, the reality, and I've been there before when I worked with Grant Thornton, the reality is most of the work done on their set of accounts is by the office junior, the least experienced person. And the person they think they've got a relationship with is the senior checking. But what happens when that person moves on? The whole trust, the relationship walks out the door with them. And, I've had a couple of clients coming to me recently because they've lost that connection. And, with Hydref, I've been through running a practice with staff, with offices. I've just got 3 dogs now, and they're not on the payroll. So I'm very open about the fact that it is just me. So I'm the office junior, the tea person, the cleaner, that kind of stuff. But they get me. I do everything. It's one point of contact. And again, I think some clients want that. They want the assurance that actually what you're talking about, and they know that actually somebody that is competent and qualified is looking after them, rather than, oh, office junior. Hey, we've all got to start there. We've all got to be learning, haven't we? So like when we do our driving test, we've got to be on the road with our big L plates. But really, you don't want that for your business, do you? You want the best of the best, because that's what you deserve.
You're absolutely right, Kath. And we've spoken to a number of our guests who've previously been in larger practices or run larger firms, and then gone back to thinking, for all the advantages and benefits, actually, life is a lot easier. And I think as we become a little bit more seasoned, we prefer those benefits and opportunities, even if that constrains what we might be able to earn.
Yeah.
in a different environment. Life is a lot easier. I can absolutely relate to that. It's a final question before we close on the podcast, and then we'll do the extra for Patreon guests. Beyond pricing, what mistakes can you remember and that you've learned from as regards the current practice specifically?
I think taking things too personally when a client decides to move on, for me, I do feel that I do invest in sort of like the relationship. I do sort of like want to build that personal relationship, and when they decide to move on, I do take that quite personally. But the reality is, for a lot of clients as well, it's just business, and they might be like, say for instance, this is quite prevalent if they're in a networking group. They want to show that they are supporting the accountant within that networking group, so to switch services. But that's also a red flag, I think, if people come to me and I can see that they switched accountants quite a lot, then really they're looking for price, or they're just ticking a box, to say I'm working with that person, rather than wanting the deep relationship. But I think basically, not dwelling on it too much, and almost thinking, actually, do you know what, now this is an opportunity, because I now have a space for somebody else who wants to come in, who is keen to work with me, who sees the value, and who's going to pay a good price for the quality of service. But when it's you and you're running your own business, I think sometimes you can't help it. It is your baby, and you do take sort of like personally when sort of a client decides to move on. But I'm very big on accountants being right for the business fit. Now, the person that you decide to work with might be through recommendations from friends and family when you start, might not be the right person that you want to work with as you're growing, as you're working towards a sale, that kind of stuff. So there's that to sort of like reflect on as well, is that businesses change, and so do their needs, and so it's right and proper that people sort of like reevaluate that as they're going through the business journey.
I think that's wonderful, and I think it also helps, of course, if you've got an established client base, so that the loss of a client doesn't make you panic.
Exactly.
Take on the first person who comes along who may not be right. And again, it's something that comes with experience. But I love the idea of recognizing a space as an opportunity to take on a better, more appropriate client. I think that's terrific. Philippa, as our time comes to an end, do you want to share something that you've recognized that makes Kath and her practice unique, that really stands out from others?
Well, where do you start? No, I mean, I think just from because I know Kath, I've known her for a long time, and she has been a client. So, but just from this 30 minutes, what shines through to me is that you talk the talk and walk the walk. So I think sometimes people become FDs or quite senior in the way that they operate without having that sort of due diligence and that experience. Whereas I think the credibility and the years of experience and the way that you've built that confidence and that sort of persona, that you completely own it. That's you completely own it. I mean, I can understand that you would have conversations with clients and prospects where you are just super confident because you're confident in yourself and you're confident in the value that you bring. And I know that a lot of people say that, but sometimes they're not really, but I can see it oozing through you. So that would be my, that would be my real sort of takeout from this 30 minutes, and that you would add enormous value. Mark, what about you?
I think it's the experience, and it's something you can't fake either. And it's those honest conversations with prospective clients going, no, you're not. If that's all you're paying, then I can tell what sort of service you're getting, and that's not the way I operate with my clients. I do a lot more than that. Your past experience with accountants may be that you're not used to that. You might not be aware of what else accountants can do. And I'm quite sure that you're having that conversation in a less salesy way than it sounded when I said that out loud. But the impression, the clarity of message will, I'm sure, be obvious to the extent that people go, hey, if I'm going to get more, I'll pay more.
Yeah.
I think that is wonderful. Anyway, sadly, as ever, our time's coming to an end. So, Kath, do you want to just share how anyone can find out more about you and Hydref, including if they go to your website, they can find out why it's called Hydref and can see the impact of some of the work Philippa did to sort of tie everything together, which I think is glorious.
Yeah, well, of course, there's the website with the contact page. Also, LinkedIn, it's got my Calendly link on there. And I've also started an Instagram page, which is called The Queen of Numbers. And so I upload little videos, sort of like just little stories on a regular basis. So Queen of Numbers on Instagram as well.
Love it.
Fantastic. Love that. Love that.
And how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
So you can find me on LinkedIn or on my website, insight101.co.uk, and you can get in touch or book a discovery call there and we can have a chat about how I can support. I support accountants and bookkeepers to stand out. And you don't necessarily have to go through, years and years of experience to find out what makes you unique and how you can position yourself. Kath has done that over time and with work with me. But if you want to really work out what your USP is right now and translate that into your marketing, your website, then do get in touch with me. Mark, give us your contact details.
Online everywhere, I'm Bookmarkly. Even the business card is a bookmark. You can also find me Markley FCA on LinkedIn. And one thing I've learned from working with accountants of all levels of experience is that running your own practice isn't easy. Many feel quite isolated. And if you'd like things to feel easier, better, more on your terms, that's exactly where I come in. Whether that's better clients, fewer headaches, more profit, just somebody to talk to. I'm always happy to have a chat, no strings attached. Some of those ad hoc conversations lead on to regular one-to-one working, or others who are significantly more experienced and don't feel the need for that just appreciate and enjoy the camaraderie of the Sole Practice Club. Sole practitioners, some with staff, some without, where we discuss practical issues and from a marketing and business development perspective, by and large, we don't whinge about the revenue and we don't discuss tax. Or we might just agree that one chat is all you need. But so do reach out if you feel that way. In any event, I'd encourage you to connect with both Philippa and myself on LinkedIn and follow the podcast pages on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Right, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but thank you, Kath. And obviously we're going to go and have another question with you. So for those people who want to become Patreon subscribers, there's going to be some unique value there coming soon. Our thanks again to the sponsors of the podcast, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast.
And thanks too to the Tax Advice Network, the easiest way for accountants to reach specialist tax advisors. Remember, there's no charge for using the website findataxadvisor.online, where you can also access their weekly tax tips written especially for general practitioner accountants.
So if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or YouTube. And I've only just found out that we have some 5-star reviews on Apple, which is really fantastic. So anyway, it all helps to, yes, more than one. It all helps to broaden the reach of the podcast. Do also please contact either myself or Mark if you would like to be interviewed on a future podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Philippa. Thanks again to Kath Docherty, our wonderful guest today. There'll be another Reflections episode of the Accountant's Success Secrets next week. That's when Philippa and I reflect on our most recent interviews. Then, after a 1-week hiatus, because Philippa's on holiday, we'll be back on the 23rd of July with our 55th interview, Richard Wilson-Artis. Before then, we're hoping to secure subscribers on Patreon, so we're going to stay online now to get further insights from Kath. These will only be available to our Patreons, assuming I can make that work. We're close. I think we're close. We're close. Until next week or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.